and I love it. I love hearing people talk about that which can't be put into words, and and everything that comes out of it. So before we begin, and I lay down some ground rules, I want to make some opening announcements for nothing.fm. So next Friday at the same time, for those who are available on Christmas Day, we'll be holding the same meeting. I think going forward after that, it'll be the third Friday of every month. And every Friday, there's something happening with nothing. There's some speaker talking or being interviewed with open questions and answers. So stay updated with that. I know next month there's a Jim Newman retreat, a virtual retreat through Zoom. So you could find out about that through nothing.fm. And I think those are the announcements. So yeah, for everyone who's joining us, welcome. This is a non-duality discussion group. And as I just mentioned, I'm floating in space here, lying down because I have a sprained wrist right now and a knee injury. So the body just has to lie down for this. And the way this meeting is going to go is, so we have 37 people in here right now. That's quite a lot to just unmute all at once and have a discussion. So what I'd like to do, this is going to be an experiment until we really figure out the best way to do it. But what we could try to do initially is, if you would like to participate in the discussion, please raise your hand. And I think you could do that by going to the chat. I think there's an option to raise your hand there. And you could also write things in the chat that we could discuss. And basically, what I'd like to have happen is for, let's say, 5 people or 10 people, some manageable amount of people to all unmute themselves. You know, raise your hand and then I'll unmute you. And then we could discuss. So let's see. No one has raised their hand yet. Bob, I see you're unmuted. Daron. Yeah, maybe we could try it that way. Just unmute. Go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like to.
Also, Art, Daron here. If you, on my iPhone, if you tap on participants and then you tap your own name, you can raise your hand there as well.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, I see some familiar names here. Welcome, Randy, Maggie. Welcome, Daron.
I'll ask you a question, Art. Considering the condition of your wrists and having to lie down and stuff, I feel like that could be a challenge to the common notion that, you know, I am not the body and all of that. And I know that you were involved in non-duality before you hurt your wrist. And I'm just curious how that has been for you.
Yeah, that's a good topic. I mean, it's been coming up a lot in the meetings that, the other meetings I've been a part of lately. I don't know if it does so much, Randy. I think, you know, non-duality is all inclusive, you know, and all exclusive. So, but it does bring things to the surface. It does bring things to the surface. Yeah, apparently. But, you know, life has ups and downs. Everyone here, I mean, maybe some percentage of the people here might feel like their day is off to a rough start, and some other percentage might be in a deep feeling of bliss or nothingness and peace. And that just changes. Everything in duality changes constantly, and the body is a part of duality. You know, I like the way Paul Hederman starts some of his meetings where he says, this is a meeting about non-duality, but we're only going to discuss duality, pretty much. And duality is change. Yeah, okay, so I'm pleasantly surprised that not everyone is unmuting themselves at once. So let's try it this way. If you'd like to join the discussion, just unmute yourself and talk. You can introduce yourself if you like. And if too many people unmute themselves, we'll go from there. Then we'll just have to manage it. Mary Jane.
Hi there.
What's on your mind, Mary Jane?
I'm trying to let go of everything that's on my mind right now. I'm going through too many feelings and emotions hitting me rapidly daily. And I'm just trying to let go of all these feelings and not let them turn into thoughts. I'm keeping the feelings. They're my feelings. I have to go through them and process them, and they're mine. But the thoughts that come, I call it monkey mind. And I'm trying to just keep the thoughts from distracting me from my feelings, and so I can go through these feelings. And like you just mentioned something about, I don't know exactly how you put it, but you had answered his question about your wrist and how it's cumbersome to be able to lay there and do these meetings and whatnot. And you said something about the body, and I can't recall how you said it. We're attached to this body, but we're not in total control of it. And yesterday I got some pretty bad news about my health that I can't do anything about except listen to doctors and follow their orders. But at the same time, I feel like there's a different route I can take. And I feel numb.
Yeah.
I feel paralyzed and numb. At the same time, I feel like I'm racing in my brain with all these feelings and thoughts.
Yeah.
But I can't control these body parts, and some of them aren't mine, and some of them I have no control over, no matter how much I try to work through it myself or tell my body parts, this is what you're going to do. They're not listening to me.
Well, Mary Jane, my heart goes out to you. Whatever you're having to deal with right now, you know, I really, there's been a lot that I've been going through this past couple of weeks with this injury. So it is, yeah. And there's ups and downs. And, you know, when somebody came to Ramana Maharshi and they asked him, they said that their whole life they've been suffering with illness and just being abused by others and all these things. And they said nothing had ever worked for them. They asked, what's the point of life, you know, or what's the good in any of this? Is there, if there is any? And he said that this brings you, he used the word God. He said this brings you to God. But we could, if anyone's not comfortable with that word, you could replace that with any other word, really. I mean, all the words are just pointers to what really is. And this group is called Nothing, No Thing, you know. And if you go back to Zen Buddhism and look at some of the original translations of nothing, it's saying that there is no thing that can be named. Nothing isn't a thing. And I'm going on a tangent there because I know not everyone's comfortable with the answer that of surrender to God, but it's really just surrender to what is, you know. And Mary Jane, I mean, you know, this, you know, this is all just life, you know, taking care of itself in a way with doctors and with everything that happens. And those are the ups and downs of duality, of life, of apparent life. And my heart goes out to you with what you're having to deal with, you know.
Thank you. I believe that my suffering, I know I've suffered a lot throughout my life, and I continue to, and things get brought up to me that are part of my past but triggers things with me. But I've learned to look at the suffering as a lesson and not fall into the suffering, but dig my way out and learn from it and find out why I'm suffering and then work from that. And the suffering exists, but there's no need for it. Pain is inevitable, but suffering, we don't need to have suffering. And we can surrender to our higher self, our higher being, whatever we feel, but it's at that moment to either accept it or let it go. But I believe in myself that hitting it head on at the moment it's hitting me is the best thing I can do. And then to just keep talking, and like these triggers that come up from my past, they're in my face right now. It's something I'm really working on with other people, and it's going to be put public. And that's where I'm getting a little anxious about it, but at the same time, I'm glad I spoke, and I spoke my truths.
Yeah.
And I brought it all to surface. I brought things to surface I didn't even remember. Somebody helped me. But going through this now, after 40 years, and reliving it all deeper because I know more details, I'm learning more. And I'm learning more about myself and how to get out of the suffering. But to attack it, to really focus on it and feel it, go through it, and then work with it from there and learn something. Not just give in to it.
Yes, yes. Yeah, it's very brave of you to share this with this group, Mary Jane, and thank you for sharing. You know, and you know, what comes to mind is, you know, Byron Katie's book title, Loving What Is. You know, that's what this could also be seen as the tantric path, some might call it that. But whatever appears, to just embrace it and see where that leads. You know, when Randy asked me about my wrist, you know, in my health situation with this body, it brings many things to the surface. It causes change in who I talk to and what appears to be happening. So it's interesting. Everything seems to lead to another thing. You know, for those who haven't heard the Zen story, I love the story of the there was the poor farmer who had a single horse that ran away. And then, you know, the neighbor came by and said, "Oh, what a tragedy." And then the farmer said, "We'll see." And then the next day, the horse came back with 2 or 3 other wild horses. And then the neighbor said, "Oh, wow, what great luck that turned out to be. Now you have 4 horses." And he said, "We'll see." And then the next day, the farmer's son was riding one of the new horses who was quite wild. He fell off and broke his leg. And then the neighbor said, "Oh, what a tragedy." And then the guy said, "We'll see." And then a week later, the country went to war and his son wasn't enlisted. And then the neighbor said, "What good luck." And of course, he said, "We'll see." And this is the way that life appears to flow, as far as I can tell. I love that story because we never know what's going to lead to what. And we don't actually know what anything is either. As Michael Markham says, there is no truth. There's only layers of description. And so if anyone else would like to unmute themselves and speak, multiple people can also unmute and have a discussion.
Also, a good thing doesn't always lead to a bad thing, and a bad thing doesn't always lead to a good thing. Like in the story, like the good thing, what you would call a good thing leads to a bad thing, and then what you would call a bad thing leads to a good thing. But sometimes a bad thing just keeps leading to more bad things for some people. You know, like people just keep experiencing tragedy after tragedy. You know.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ian. You don't really know what's going to happen next. But, you know, when this sort of situation was, you know, posed to Ramana or Nisargadatta, they had a similar answer, which is, you know, this tends to cause this. This appears to cause seeking. I don't know if it actually does cause it or not, but you know, I saw this interview with Eckhart Tolle where he was asked if suffering was necessary to be a seeker, and he said he didn't know, but he just if you do the thought experiment, if somebody always had everything they ever wanted and never suffered a day in their life, why would they seek anything other than, you know, what most people want? This is really for those who have had a calling for something deeper than the material or the superficial, or what most people would call good or bad luck. I don't feel like the situation that my body's dealing with right now is entirely bad. I think it creates new opportunities and interesting situations. You know, to me, it just all seems interesting, you know, because now we're having a discussion around it because I have a hurt wrist. So would anyone else like to unmute themselves and talk? Yasemin.
Hi, I just wanted to say regarding the suffering and how to deal with suffering. I was just reading this really great book. It's called Healing Space. And it talks about the alchemy and how, you know, instead of like, let's say, attacking or trying to get rid of certain emotions or, you know, the suffering, rather than doing that, to basically befriend it and to, you know, all the dark sides in yourself, to kind of make friends with that and befriend yourself. And so it's really interesting. I was just reading that, so I wanted to add that to the suffering.
I agree with you 100%. And when I say the word attack, I probably use that wrong. Befriending it is the better way to term that. Befriend your suffering, befriend your difficult issues, and love them and learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
That was an excellent way to put it. Befriend it, not attack it. Befriend it, bond with it, and experience it.
Yeah, yeah, that was beautiful. Yes, I mean, it reminds me of what Thich Nhat Hanh says, the Buddhist teacher, where his advice towards anger and other troublesome feelings, if you want to call it that, you know, is to make it your friend and to hug it and to love it, you know, and maybe even to ask, why is it there, you know, because life is here to help life, really. That appears to be what's happening. And you know, and when difficult things come up, there's, yeah, questioning is a good place to be, you know, dropping away from whatever story is there that might feel heavy. If you're able to loosen the grip on that story, just see what else might arise.
Yeah, right. That's what you were just saying about Byron Katie. What she does is so excellent about, you know, this whole inquiry and whatever comes up in the mind, what you believe and think, and whether that is really true. And, you know, but also I think that befriending suffering, befriending the difficult emotions, but not just to sort of like transcend it and to, you know, come out on the other side and it's all wonderful and happy and shiny, but rather just to really, in the tapestry of life, just to have all of it. You know, you kind of, I think you have to have the polarities as well, rather than just say, okay, I want to have joy and peace and calm and I've transcended all the difficulties. I don't think that is such a complete picture, you know, of who we are or it could be in terms of just integrating everything that arises, and maybe the difficulties can also teach us something.
Yes, beautiful, Yasemin. Yeah, well put. It's not, non-duality is not bliss. There is no transcending the human body, the ups and downs of interactions. in this world. There is no transcending of that, you know.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, please. Yes, Freddie.
Yes. I get a bit frustrated with the non-duality mantra that nothing's happening. And so how do we reconcile this conversation about suffering with this mantra of non-duality, this mantra of nothing's happening? I don't get it, really.
Yeah, that's a great question, Freddie. And I think that's a question that could be explored different ways.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think one way is, I like the way that Paul Hederman puts it, where
Mm-hmm.
Paul Hederman says that you don't need this message, you know? So the only one who can receive this message is what you're not. And then what you're not gets a hold of this message that there's nothing or something like this. And then what you're not takes hold of that and grips it, and it becomes a sort of dogma or fixed thing. And the reality is, what you are, who is, doesn't need any of this. It's
right. You're referring to the ego mind when you say what you're not gets it.
Sure.
Hold on to it.
Different teachers, different speakers have different words for the same things or similar things. And so it's taken me a while to kind of have the Google translating in the brain of this body to do this stuff. Like, so for example, Paul Hederman doesn't use the word ego. He would just say it's what you're not. Nisargadatta called it consciousness and the contents of consciousness.
Okay.
And say all of that is what you're not. You're not the content of consciousness. You are what is prior to any of that stuff.
So how do we reconcile what we're not with this problem of suffering?
Well, yeah, so here's another way to answer your earlier question, which kind of ties in with that, which is, you know, for the body mind, for the apparent self, whatever you want to call that, ego, whatever, you know, it's kind of just going to do what it does, you know?
Yeah.
And I think the key is just to see that that's not who you are, that's kind of all happening on its own. Like the I don't know what to call him, the non-teacher maybe, U.G. Krishnamurti. I love how he said, you know, if you became in control of your heart beating, you would die within a minute, right? And if it took conscious effort to beat your own heart, you would die within a minute. And yet there's this illusion that people have that they're in control of their thoughts, that they're in control of their actions, that they're in. And so this kind of points to what you're talking about. Another thing I wanted to mention though is, as far as the suffering goes, yeah, it's like what Yasemin was saying. It's sort of all included, you know. It's one of the great dilemmas of seekers is believing that there's a final state to achieve, that there's a way to always be in bliss or always be in peace, and then this illusion is perpetuated by people who speak on a podium and have a sort of, this is kind of assumed about them, but no, there's no camera on any of these humans, gurus 24/7, right? So we don't really know, you know, but they're sharing a beautiful message at the same time of who you are. And so, yeah, I think suffering is just part of life, really. Mm-hmm. And this message, as far as I understand it or can communicate, is about realizing that's not what you are, or what you are is all inclusive. It's the totality.
Right. So it's like level confusion.
Yes.
The suffering exists on the level of the body.
Precisely.
Whereas nothingness exists in the level of, it's kind of transcendent of the level. I
wouldn't say it's transcendent. I would say it's all inclusive. You know, some people call it the ground of being. So it's the ground of that everything appears to arise from is always still.
Sure.
Yeah,
I'm glad. I appreciate the way you addressed my query.
It's a wonderful question, Freddie.
Thank you.
Thank you. John, I see you're unmuted. Is there anything you'd like to say?
No, I just wanted to maybe talk a little bit about the kind of non-concession, non-duality, where, you know, one would say there's nobody to surrender or to not surrender. We talk a lot about, you know, like what we just talked about at the beginning of this meeting of surrendering to pain or whatnot, but on one level it just is. So it's more of a, even if you are seemingly resisting pain, that's also what is. So it just gets a little, sometimes when you come to these meetings, it's like on one level it seems like there's different levels of whatever you want to call it, you know, because on one level there is no one and no one to surrender or no one to not surrender, but on another level it might seem like surrendering helps.
Yeah, well put, John. Yeah. I see so many people in here who I know and love. I want to say hi to Tim. Great to see you, Tim. Great to see you. William. There's too many people here to even name. It's great. Michael. Wonderful to have you, Michael. Emily. Maggie. Daron. Yeah, so anyone who likes, feel free to unmute yourself and join the conversation.
Hi, Art.
Oh,
Hi,
Anne.
Art.
Anne.
Great to see you. So
Wonderful.
Excited about this meeting. It's great. I mean, you know, I've been to a lot of meetings and, you know, Tony Parsons, I'm in England, so it's easy to go and see him and things. But recently, over the past few months, I've found it so beneficial to speak to other people generally about non-duality and get into groups where it's not just a speaker and it can be sort of thrashed around between a group of people. And I feel that's just opened up so much, and particularly being in your Zoom, Art, that I love, and talking to people on the phone about non-duality. Really, it's so beneficial to just kind of maybe look at some of the concepts that have been picked up and beliefs, like new beliefs, you know, new concepts and new beliefs in non-duality, like there's no one, nothing's happening. It's only a concept, you know. Yes, it points to something and it's a brilliant pointer. Probably, you know, the Tony Parsons are some of the best pointers. And certainly you know, it smashed me apart having that around. But at the end of the day, they are concepts, you know, they are. And I think the body mind can take them on as beliefs and create new beliefs on top of the old ones of being a person. So it's nice to speak to people and just kind of see. I think it's helped me to see what I've taken on that's maybe not useful anymore. And in terms of illness, I think I suffer with a lot of illness too. I've got fibromyalgia. So, you know, my life's a lot lighter. I don't know if there's a person or not a person. I mean, it used to be my ultimate goal to be no one or whatever, everything and nothing. But, you know, I don't know anymore. It's just like, as long as I'm traveling lighter and so spacious, that feels absolutely fantastic here. But as far as illness is concerned and pain is pain. It's always pain. It doesn't change. It doesn't get any easier, really. And you can still want to avoid it. You know, there's still sort of some resistance sometimes. And I think that the thing that I've come to, what happens here is that, you know, there's always the emptiness in everything. Everything is always empty, but the mind can't know that. The mind can't know non-duality. That's the trouble, and it's the mind that's seeking and searching in some ways for that, and can never achieve it because it's beyond the mind. You know, this is totally beyond the mind. It's not a concept. It's not a belief, but it is very empty. You know, even when there's illness, it's empty. Even when it doesn't feel empty, it's empty. You know, all the feelings and thoughts and everything are empty. It just doesn't feel it. The body mind can't go there at all, because you know, it's not the body mind. It is the body mind and it's not the body mind. But yeah, I don't know why I wanted to say that, but I think I'm just so excited about this meeting, and so happy to see everyone joining it.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. Yeah, well, it's wonderful to hear you sharing your experience, and yeah, it's this. Well, Paul, the way Paul Hederman puts it again, I just love the way he puts this. That, you know, that the character may travel lighter. You know, the action figure may travel lighter. It's not who you are, but there does appear to be a lightness that increases with this sort of thing. There appears to be that. You know, I wouldn't say that's promised or anything. And I think the moment you try to get something, you're going to miss it, you know? So it's tricky. You can't say there's anything to get, but yeah, if I had been in the same physical condition 5 years ago, I definitely wouldn't have been able to do this meeting or, you know, I don't know. There's a lightness about it all, you know, and there's a surrender. I mean, you know, that for me, at least, for this body mind, surrender is a word that resonates, and it's just, yeah, there's just nothing more beautiful than that, because there are no words, there is no concept, there's not even an attempt for a concept with surrender. You know, and yeah,
I think it seems like surrender because illness here, it stops the body mind, it stops it dead, because it can't function properly when it's ill, and that feels like surrender, like it can't do anything else.
Yes,
that's how it seems anyway.
Yeah, and it's, you know, there's the old Indian saying that your head is already in the tiger's mouth. If you're here, then, you know, that's the case. Your head is already in the tiger's mouth, and it's gonna eat your head. or the way that Paul puts it, he says, like, if you're on the surgeon's table, there's nothing to do. You just lie down and but at the same time, the mind's, you know, these discussions are great and they're filled with beautiful exchanges of concepts. To me, so I host a private meeting like this Wednesdays and Sundays, and the name of it changes all the time. We've changed the name to jazz at one point, and science, and because you could really call this anything. You don't have to call this non-duality. You don't have to call this anything, you know, because it's really, any word you use is not it. And at the same time, you know, this is a dance. This is a constant flow. This is just life. And life includes everything. You know, the suffering, the joy, the concepts, the surrender. It's nothing and everything.
Harry, I'd like to join your Tuesday or Thursday. meeting that you mentioned just now?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, my name is Art. So if you see my name there, Art Pinsof, if you add me, yeah. So if you add me on Facebook, just send me a private message and I'll send the details. So anyone who's interested in my Wednesday and Sunday meetings, just send me a private message on Facebook at Art Pinsof.
I thought your name was, oh yeah, Harry. I thought you were Harry, but you're not. Beg your pardon.
No worries. Yeah, Harry's here to help out.
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah.
I love your laid back style, literally.
Yeah, very laid back.
I love it. I think we should all start to be like that. Well, I'm on my bed too.
Yeah, I was just I was just thinking before this meeting that I think this is how Ramana like talk to people, and definitely not comparing myself to Ramana. But yeah, Ramana had a couch he was sitting on towards the end when he was sick mostly. Yeah. Yeah, so
hey Art, I'm not on, for those of us not on Facebook.
Yeah.
Is there another way possibly we might connect?
Yeah, gosh, I wish I would have thought of this in advance.
Hey, I'll see you around, I'm sure, and send you a message somehow. How about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, here I'll put my email in the chat so anyone can email me if they want.
Sure. Thanks, man.
No problem. Great, John. So yeah, somebody who hasn't spoken yet, unmute yourself and share. Feel free to share. Let's see.
Are you in Austin, Texas?
I am in Austin, Texas.
Thank you.
Yes. Let's see. Does anyone else want to speak? Don't be shy. Carol, you have anything on your mind? No. Laura?
I just unmuted myself when you said you were in Austin because I'm in Katy.
Oh, that's hilarious. I'm from Houston originally.
Oh, that's funny. I don't know what brought me to this meeting. And I'm so private, generally. This body mind tends to be keep to myself, not talk in public. And it seems that since you guys started doing the nothing media, I've been to so many meetings and talking. So that seems to be happening. And I have an observation or maybe a question.
Yes.
I'm beginning to see or to understand intellectually that as when we speak, it's always in two levels. Like the absolute, which is kind of like Tony, and also when we speak about the body mind, the goings on, the pains and whatever's happening. And I sense that the thing that possibly draws me to these meetings is primarily seeking for pleasure, but there's something deeper, like a longing, like something. It's like the felt sense is not quite right. And I don't know if I make sense, but it seems that the identity, how you identify, is kind of key in some way. And at the same time, it's what's happening. And if you understand that there's not an actual entity, but a thought-based psychological person, you kind of already know that that's not you. But I feel like if it's not felt in the body mind, it's so easy to get back or engage in thoughts and stories and be attached to outcomes and all that. And I know that the non-dual pointings generally are so absolute to just point out that there's no you or no me. But it never really addresses that what appears or is felt as inconsistency, or I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah,
but
yeah. Laura, it's a great point you're making. I mean, you know, there's this, I mean, you could say that there's two levels, that there's the non-dual absolute level, and there's this apparent arising of the body and the thoughts and all of this. And I think, you know, I mean, that Nothing Media hosts a lot of great teachers who speak at this level of totality, of nothing, of the absolute. And that's really freedom, you know, that's liberation. And everything else is kind of what you described as, you know, a stepping stone to get somewhere that you won't really ever get. You know, it'll always take you to the next step, to the next step. And this is why there are people who've been doing practices and seeking for 50 years or something, you know, meditating in Ramana's cave and, you know, going on retreats around the world, you know, all these different things, you know, and yet, you know, the decades pass and they're still seeking. It's because the seeking perpetuates the seeking. And Jim Newman said this in a beautiful way a few months ago. He said, you know, that seeking itself is acquiring knowledge, which always leads to more knowledge. And he said, longing is recognizing that that's what seeking is, and that there's no end to it. And so, you know, and that's sort of playing with words, you know, seeking and longing, but I think it's a beautiful way to look at it, because, yeah, like if there's a deeper longing for the end of seeking, you know, that's what this is about. And along the way, the character, the action figure, the body mind might travel lighter. But as long as you're trying to get something like traveling lighter, it kind of takes you further away.
Yeah, just when you were speaking, I felt this loud no, like when you mentioned the people that seek for 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, but even in that, you know, if you don't want that, it's if your conditioning doesn't want that, I don't know, it's still a wanting, it's still not you.
Yeah, it just happens on its own, you know. It's your head's in the tiger's mouth and there's really nothing to do at a certain point, you know, but just let it happen. And thinking can get in the way, and the story can get in the way, and those are the things that actually drop away, you know, as the tiger eats.
So less seeking, less or the complete recognition that everything's perfect in this moment and there's nothing to seek.
But then if you try to make that a to-do, then that
exactly.
So it's so elusive. It's so elusive. Yeah. And actually, I heard somebody ask Tim Kliss, I don't know if Tim is still here, but somebody asked him in a meeting a few months ago if he ever heard of someone who talks about this who wasn't a really earnest seeker for a long period of time often. And he said no, he hasn't. He said he hasn't heard of anyone who talks about this who wasn't a seeker. So yeah, it's all quite paradoxical.
I guess. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, as some put it, it's not either or logic, it's both and logic. So yeah, which isn't really logical. But yeah, it's all moms. What is your name? All moms.
Jared. I could
What is
change it. Jared.
Jared. Oh, you're trolling me, Jared. All right. Jared has been a member of this meeting since the very beginning for 2 years. So it's wonderful to have you here, Jared.
Yeah, I guess I just think it's like this relates to what we were talking about. It's like this conception that there's the absolute reality and then that there's the day-to-day reality. I mean, I think that's just because it's because we're like people are trying to understand or postulate like in words the absolute. I don't think there's, you know, it's like the absolute isn't what we say it is. That's why there's two realities. That's why it seems like there's a reality of like nothing or no one doing anything. I think personally that it's a bit more complicated than you can say with that or with any words. So I don't know, it's like I just think maybe there's only a separation there if you believe that the words about what the experience is.
Yeah. Hey, Bob, I'm muting you because there's some noise in the background there. Yeah. So, Jared, it's, yeah, whatever is seen can't be the seer. You know, that's that's what it comes down to. You know, so if there's some sort of liberation that is experienced, that's not it either. If there's a sense of no separation that's experienced, that's not it. And yet there does seem to be in duality, basically. And I had a wonderful conversation with Michael, who's here now, the other day. And at the beginning of our conversation, he used the word longing. And there's a longing that persists. And I got what he meant by it. It's like the word I would use for that is inspiration, maybe. These are just words, but it's like it's the feeling of like humanness, of human drive to do, you know, and this really can't go away because it's in the body. It's genetics, it's conditioning.
I don't know, yeah.
And so
I don't know if there's anything human about it. I feel like that's...
Well, you could call it universal or anything, but... Yeah, you could call it universal, but the version of it we experience is human. And so you could call that human or whatever you want, but basically there's a duality between that longing. And then at the end of this talk with Michael, he was talking about the peace that passeth understanding. You know, what other people call the ground of being. And so this is like the yin and yang almost, you know, there's the longing to do, to achieve, to get, you know, that's just natural, even if it's just food and sleep. You know, it could be very simple wanting and longing of the body, or it could be something else. But this just kind of happens on its own. And underneath it, within it, there's also always this peace, you know, that may or may not be recognized. You know, it seems that the story is what blocks from seeing, you know, what is underneath. And there's very little story that's really needed, you know, to do.
Hello.
Hey, is that Elena?
Yeah, I have a question. How you deal with addictions? Alcohol, food, cigarettes, and if you try everything, it's just don't do nothing. It's just what's happening, and one day they will drop or not.
No, that's not what I would say. I would say if someone has an addiction, they should get help for that from someone who's qualified. You know, maybe go to a 12-step meeting, maybe, but you know, at the level of duality, you have to treat things with duality solutions for duality problems. You know, and non-duality doesn't need to be fixed. It's already perfect. You know, if somebody has addiction problems and they're drawn to this message of non-duality, it will probably bring more peace. It will probably bring more lightness. But, you know, there are quite a few non-dual speakers, like Paul Hederman, for one, who are very open about their addictive body-mind, you know, character. He would call it the action figure. And whether that's genetic or conditioning, that doesn't go away. You know, he's still not going to take a drink, you know, because that's just the way his body-mind is. And he actually, you know, yeah, he hosts 12-step reflection meetings twice a week for people who are, you know, also suffering from addiction. If you look up Paul Hederman, you could find all about that. But yeah, I wouldn't say that this message. And here's another thing Paul Hederman says. He's one of my favorite people to listen to be honest, lately. But it changes over time. I studied Ramana for many years exclusively, and then Nisargadatta, and I've heard all these people talk, and it's all beautiful. And I feel like personally, everyone is saying the same message in different ways. Sometimes they're speaking at different levels, but it's all the same. And it all comes down to what you resonate with. But yeah. I would just.
Nisargadatta died of cancer because he smoked.
Maybe. Well, it looks like it. Yeah.
He didn't do nothing in duality, you know.
Yeah, Nisargadatta, he smoked his bidis, which he sold at his corner store. That's what he did. And, you know, Ramana, at the end of his life, people were trying to help him heal the cancer that was on his arm. And at a certain point, he said, what are you trying to fix? Like, don't you realize that the body itself is the great illness? Which is pretty brutal, you know? But I guess his point was that everything is just happening on its own, you know? And every body mind is different, what they're drawn to, you know, that's kind of just happening on its own. But yeah, but if someone has serious psychological issues, I've heard even Jim Newman say, you know, maybe, you know, if you need to, you know, let the apparent arising of the person with the problem see a shrink, you know? So, yeah.
Like if you had diabetes, you wouldn't just say that's what's happening and, you know, not do anything. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, oh, this is the thing I was going to mention that Paul says. I love this. He says, the greatest thing that any spiritual system can do for you is to fail. And so if you're trying to use non-duality to solve a problem like addiction, you know, the best thing it can do for you is not work. Because then you'll know that that's not what it does. And you'll be left with your own devices, your own story. You know, and this kind of just has to work itself out. That's just life taking care of life at the level of wherever it's appearing. I mean, this body, the wrist got hurt and the knees hurt. So I was like, oh, I'm screwed. But, you know, and then I just call up friends, see who can help and figure out, you know, what my insurance covers. Turns out nothing. And then, you know, find out what my options are and go from there, you know. But it all just happens on its own. It's like a puzzle. It's like a logical, it's like water flowing down a mountain, you know. It's like it hits a little puddle and it gets puddled up and then it'll go down to the next level. It's just, you know, life just happens.
Hey, it's Kaiser. I'm really glad to be here.
Awesome, Kaiser. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, it's going great, man. But I wanted to get your experience, your take on this particular thing.
Yeah.
So there's a deep appreciation and intellectual understanding of, you know, how the implications of like a non-dual and that kind of stuff, and even experiences of non-dual kind of existence, or like, you know, I can actually actively investigate my experience. And many times I come up with the realization that doesn't have a lot of room for individual separate self and that kind of stuff. And I've heard there's an implication that seeing that or intellectually experience or actually experiencing that kind of imbues like a release. And what's so mysterious is I've had a lot of these kind of things, experiences, and then yet there's something, and I'll say, and like I'll have a realization, and there's something else that still believes the separate self. So there's an appreciation and experience of a non-separate self, and there's a continuation of believing in a separate self and operating through that. And it seems like there should be a resolution to that. It's very mysterious in my own experience. It's mysterious. I don't know.
Yeah. 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 Thanks, Kaiser. I mean, great to have you here. Yeah. I mean, well, it's funny how you ended what you were saying with, the expectation of a resolution. And, I think you must have heard intellect, and have some intellectual, understanding that there is no real resolution in a sense. But I don't know, some people do talk about a shift. I don't want to be dogmatic about no resolution. I mean, this is all paradoxical. There is and there isn't a shift. And whether the shift is gradual or all at once, somehow it's both. Whether it ends or doesn't, somehow it's both. And then there's different teachers or speakers that emphasize both either. But yeah, but as far as the experiences go, I mean, anything that comes and goes can't be it. So, but what you said was dead on. I mean, Paul talks about the wattage and how it's like, he calls these experiences free glimpses. And he talks about, it's like, it might be like if you change the wattage on an electronic device from 110 volts to 220, it would kind of like fry it a little bit. And experience, and Nisargadatta sort of talked about this, that it's just different how it appears for every body mind. I would say U.G. Krishnamurti went even further, and he said that if this happens for you, that which doesn't happen to anyone, so he covered all his bases. But if this happens to you, it will appear in a way that it has never appeared before in the history of humanity, in the history of the universe. And so, yeah, so everyone puts it differently, so it's confusing as hell. But, it sounds like, your head's in the tiger's mouth, and, it's just going to happen the way it happens. I mean,
yeah, it's very mysterious. It's like we actually are awake and we can experience that. And sometimes there's suffering as well. It's very odd. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like it when Paul Hederman says, like, what does he say? He says, like, when people will bring things up from time to time about what they're thinking, what they're experiencing, and how it doesn't go away. And he says, well, just see that that's not you, It's like life, the apparent dualistic life doesn't stop. The roller coaster that appears doesn't stop. It's just, it's no longer taken to be who you are, what you are. And then through that, there might be a lightness.
It makes room for everything.
All inclusive, yeah. Yeah, there's nothing outside of it. There's nowhere to get. Who else would like to talk? How about some of my friends who are here? from before. I think you're all my friends now. But Daron, is there anything on your mind that you'd like to share?
Hey Art, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. It's really nice to see you and hear you, and loads of people here. It's great. It's just been really nice listening. I'm wrapping Christmas presents right now.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I was just thinking about how this just doesn't move and it's unchanging and it's always just this. And at some point it will be Christmas morning and I'll be unwrapping these presents with my son, and that will be this. And just in that, there's a huge amount of relaxation and relief, I guess. You know, just that silent, empty stillness, that unchanging, timeless no thing that we call it, whatever it is. I don't really know. I don't know whether there's a me or whether there isn't a me. It's just all going on, and it isn't. I loved what Anne said earlier. It's nice to hear you, Anne. I noticed Tim and Michael are here. It'd be nice to hear from them too.
I think he had to put his son to bed, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know. I just think.
What do you think about what Kaiser said about, you know, the appearance of thoughts are happening for you, Daron, right? So how do you?
Yeah, right.
And so how do you do they seem different, or can there still be expectation of like figuring something out, getting somewhere, getting to the bottom of something?
They're less sticky, I guess. I've heard that word used a lot, but it does feel a little bit like that. They're less personal. Well, not personal at all. I mean, sometimes they could feel personal, but I don't really know what that means. They just come and go, I guess. Sometimes I'm more involved with them. It feels like there's somebody that's involved, but that's only a thought about somebody being involved after the fact. You know, I would say that something that does feel very different is if there are trigger thoughts that used to be triggers or situations. Now those seem to, that they go off. They don't go off with a bang. They just sort of, it's like a cracker. You know, when you pull a cracker and it just goes, one of the broken ones. And, you know, the expectation is of a bang, and then it's just a foot and nothing happens.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's much more, feels more relaxing. You know, it's just not so, it's just, stuff just isn't so important, and it's not so personal. But of course, the stuff that is important that you need to do, you can just get on with like you normally would, because everything, you know, is just happening like it normally is. I mean, it's the same for everyone else. Everything's just going on. But you know, a lot of people feel that there's somebody behind all that doing it all.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well said, man. Thank you.
Yeah, nice to chat.
Nice to have you here. Maggie, I was wondering if you'd like to share or say hi. If you can hear me, Maggie.
Unmute. I was just thinking to myself, as Daron spoke, that there are still things I can get passionately caught on. And then in the next moment, it's released. And there, that piece that's always there, even while the character is into something. And yeah, it's still life. I liked what Kaiser said too. You know, I still seem to have, and I'm using the word I, and I use it with relish, as I had a teacher that was telling me I couldn't speak that way. So, but because that's as meaningless as anything else, that there does seem to be a foot in both worlds. I mean, it's all going on. There hasn't been any, I don't know, I hear others speak of, like, maybe we should ask Michael to speak about this too, about a shift in which, you know, seems to be, I know Paul would say traveling lighter, and traveling lighter and lighter and lighter. But.
Yeah, well, you know, leaving this, well, I forget how you put it, but you were told what to say and what not to say.
Speaking in the third person as if that, you know, had an effect on the dream.
Right, but that, yeah, is there anything else you'd like to say on that, where people could fall, certain people can fall into a dogmatic way of speaking maybe, or...
Right, and what I noticed is for this character, I had, you know, like it's like I've had these movements into this stuff. Obviously there was an attraction, and then there's this falling away of it as the falsities realized, or perhaps meaninglessness is a better way to say it, because it's more neutral, you know, like there's nothing wrong with it. It just is, you know, like everything is. Then start to discover that also every conditioning, every snowflake has a different pattern. So while I talk to God to ask to be helped to be sober for I think it's 8 days now that I'm sober, after a relapse after 30 years, you know, which was kind of damaging to the character's standing, a little humbling, and a great thing. That it's individual, and I think I have this at the moment, maybe there's an overcorrection or overreaction. And obviously I'm talking from the world of duality, I guess I'd have to say.
Yeah.
And that it's a little overreactive, but it also feels good in that I'm starting to put my feet onto the clean sand and wonder, well, what is the expression here? You know? Yes, go ahead.
Oh, well, yeah, you know, when I think about this dogma approach, or let's say there's a teacher on a podium that's correcting everyone who's asking questions, and they're making it seem like there's a right and wrong way to think about this or to say this with words, when really this is prior to words, beyond words, or how you can't put it in words. And yet, you know, there's this ebb and flow with everything in duality. And so I think everyone kind of has to I wouldn't say everyone as a rule, but seekers tend to start with some teacher, with some teaching, with some group, where they have to learn it really well and experience what there is to experience through it. And maybe they never leave it, and maybe they don't need to. But if they do leave it, because it starts to appear a little too dogmatic, a little bit fixed in how everything is described, you know, that just doesn't resonate with them. Going back to the Yuji Krishnamurti quote, that if this happens to you, it will appear and be communicated in a way it has never been before. So to me, I see this as like an ebb and flow of just duality, you know, where you learn until you don't need to, and then you learn there's nothing to learn, maybe. I don't know. It just shows up differently for everyone.
Yeah, I'm into the analogy of the snowflake.
That's beautiful.
And that no two seem to be alike, although we do share a common element that makes up the snowflake. The water at the temperature that freezes, and yet the beautiful individual prisms. I guess that'd be about as close as I could get to it.
Yeah.
In the regard of how it expresses and receives, and how each seeming I don't know, even movement doesn't quite scratch the itch, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
How this proceeds through life and form and formlessness.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is true for all characters. I don't think anything is, but for this character and others, you know, many of us tend to go to extremes. And I've heard this story from one friend who went to one extreme with one teacher, and then, you know, he went from a more conventional guru, let's say, and then he went from that to radical non-duality, and he attended all of the Tony and Jim meetings he could in Europe. And then he had some type of experience, and then he decided to do nothing. And then he didn't attend any meeting or listen to anything on YouTube or read anything for 3 years. And so he did, after like 10 years of seeking these different ways, then he did 3 years of adamantly not seeking anything. And then at the end of that, he realized that he was not seeking, that was something he was still doing. Mm-hmm. And so I think in a way, you know, we tend to sort of keep going to extremes until we see that there's nothing we can do. The head is already in the tiger's mouth and it's being done. You know? But there's a resonance in groups like this where that we enjoy, you know, and I like that description of it. There's a warmth, there's a resonance. And
what do you mean by not seeking as an activity? Like you're saying he's actively not seeking? Is that what you just said?
Yeah, he's trying to not seek. He's trying to get somewhere by not seeking. Yeah. That was the story. Yeah. For a while. Because he was so adamantly seeking to get somewhere. He thought maybe the opposite would work, but you know, it just happens on its own how it happens. You know? If it happens. And it's already here, you know? It's already this. And Michael, I see that you're here with us. Would you like to unmute and share your experience, your perspective? You'll have to unmute yourself. Maybe I could help you. Yeah? You're still muted, Michael. I sent you an unmute request. Well, anyway, Michael Markham, he's a lovely speaker on.
Am I now?
I'll give you the little introduction, Michael, for those who aren't familiar. And yeah, Michael and his friend Nancy Neithercut, they host a private Facebook group called Exploding Rainbows. And you might have seen Nancy at the Nothing Conference. Michael also had some video content on the YouTube channel in the Void Village of that conference. And yeah, Michael, would you like to share what it's like for you a bit?
Oh, for some reason I messed up my Zoom screen and I can't see anybody, but that's okay. I found myself just traveling light today, lighter than normal. I was enjoying seeing the faces that I've learned to love. You, Maggie, Daron, several others. I enjoyed, I think it was Laura's white poodle wanted some attention. Came up to her and and Tim's little boy, who I haven't seen before. It's absolutely delightful. It was almost, the lightness was more than normal, not being in the chair, so to speak. Not formulating answers to ideas that came up. It's just kind of going along with them. I didn't expect to talk or plan to talk. And it was actually incredibly pleasant. I noticed Tim was enjoying himself, not being in the chair. I can remember Emerson's sweet, gentle voice. I like the sound of your voice, Art. I really don't have anything to say. I'm just kind of floating.
Well, that's beautiful. It's beautiful to hear you floating and share what you're saying. You know, I'm reminded of how you sometimes express that it's like being a puppy let off the leash at the beach.
Yes, in a modified form. That type of exhilaration we couldn't maintain long. But there is a, excuse me, I'm having trouble with my cough this morning. There's a delightful laissez-faire floating down this incredible river, going wherever it's going to go. It's sometimes the water's rough and sometimes it's warm, but it's exciting. The whole thing is and short. We won't be here that long, and I think all the time. I think of all the time I worried about the future and the past. I just don't. I'm sorry. They don't seem relevant to me anymore. I don't believe. I think the self is a mental fabrication, and that free will is an illusion. So all the things I feel guilty about, still I love myself for feeling guilty about. But it's not that I had a choice in the matter. It's really the lightness of being, the incredible lightness of simply being. I think the self is a jewel, not something to be escaped, but something to be cherished as a gift. I think the most precious gift in the universe. Awareness, aware that it's aware. I think it's the place where love and beauty exist.
Well, Michael, let me ask you this leading question. What could you describe? Could you know what the self is? Could you see yourself?
No, it simply doesn't exist. It's a mental fabrication. That's why we look inside and can't find anything. The brain creates a pseudo-reality, a conceptual overlay, an objectified perspective where everything has a name. And that's where the illusion of separation comes in. And that's where the loneliness comes in. And the loneliness is where the love comes in.
And the longing, Michael?
And the longing. Yeah, the longing remains. It's life's longing. Every sentient being longs for things that fulfill its mandate to survive and reproduce. We are that, plus life's objectified longing. We long for things like happiness. And there's no such thing. It's just a chemical surge in the brain that lasts for normally 22 seconds. As soon as we drive that new car away, we think, this shine starts to wear off. A new spouse, a new friend, a new girlfriend, or a new boyfriend, 2 or 3 months, they start to show their humanness, and a lot of that rush of chemicals has become diluted with rationality. We seek things that exist only in our imagination, and that's why we have trouble finding them. The brain is actually seeking through us, and I think when that is seen, it's a subtle shift in the way the brain sees or views the world. But it's profound. I used to talk about this under the name Tumbaru, and he understood this intellectually, but he didn't experience this incredible shift that I think it was spoken of as enlightenment, but it's just, I think, an innate ability of the human brain to see that it's created or fabricated this sense of separation and this illusory sense of self. And goodness, I'm going on. I don't mean to.
Well, Michael, you've put a lot out there into the group, and this has given the group a great taste of what you have to offer.
No,
thank you for sharing, Michael. And just so everyone knows, Michael and his friend Nancy Neithercut, they have a private group. You could look him up on Facebook, Michael Markham, and they have a Facebook group he could add you to, or I could add you to, and you could ask him about their meetings. They actually have Zoom meetings every day of the week, you know? So in the afternoon, for those in the but in any case, I'd like to open it up for anyone else who'd like to ask a question or share. And in response to anything Michael said or anything else that's been said or anything really. Is there anyone else that would like to share or ask questions? Let's see, Lynette. It's lovely to see you here.
All right, I don't know what I'm going to say. And I was just thinking, I just came out of I'm going to be a little quiet, out of a meeting with my daughter who's here sequestered in our house. And she invited me into an AA meeting with her. And I haven't gone to I did go to 3 in my life, but I haven't, it wasn't a track that I followed. But I was incredibly impressed with, she went in mostly older women. It was a women's group. So here it's Friday in the afternoon. So and the references and what people were speaking about was regrets. It was talking about regrets and how they processed that. And what spurred the conversation was a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh, however you say his name, Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yes.
But I was so sort of impressed with, yeah, there's a dogma or there's a format and all that stuff, but these women were so, they could be in any of the groups that we're in right now, that I'm in right now. And I was very delightfully surprised. But the whole thing, about regrets and what I would have shared and I didn't share, but I would have shared, do you see the thought stream, how punitive it is, and that there is no past except for the thinking of it, it wouldn't have gone over probably because they're a lot about making amends and, the whatnot, but anyway, it's just what was happening. I came from that into this, so I'm an hour late, so I've missed an hour of this meeting. But I was buoyed by seeing their responses and what they're talking about these days that probably wasn't something that was being talked about. So, or the references, So anyway, that's all.
Yeah, thank you, Lynette. Yeah, I think there's a beauty to just the raw openness and sharing that can happen in these groups, in these non-dual meetings. This group, everyone who's new here or coming from the Nothing retreats and the other Friday content. I mean, they're meeting a lot of the people that I've been having these groups with for the last year or two. And I find this even in the non-duality meetings with the speaker, where people have the freedom to ask anything. Oh, and it's perfect timing. I apologize if you can hear I don't know, maybe a leaf blower or lawnmower outside. But, but yes, this is a safe meeting to explore our awakeness. And I would say lack of awakeness, whatever is showing up. This is a safe meeting to explore whatever is showing up without the burden of understanding it, teaching it, or defending it. I'm sort of responding to what Kaiser wrote in the comments there. And yeah, that's exactly what this is. You know, if someone, Ian, please share.
I was just thinking, like, how amazing hands are. Like, because I'm here cooking breakfast, and like I'm using different things, and how amazing just conceptually hands are, because they turn anything like you into an extension of your body. And even in the animal kingdom, that's something that's like really rare to be able to do with your body. Like you pick something up and it sort of it becomes an extension of your body, like a tool. Like, you know, I don't know, I was just thinking something completely unrelated to anything that I was thinking about and sort of tripping out about.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I mean, you know, people talk about the ordinariness, the extraordinary ordinary. You know, you don't have to fly to India and have all your chakras exploding with light. You know, you really could just look at your hand and marvel at the fact that there's a hand, apparently. I mean, the fact that anything exists, you know, this voice, this body, you know, it's vibrating air, and all these brains across the world are receiving it through the air vibrating into their eardrums out of computer speakers or their cell phone. And then meaning appears, meaning attached to these words, and a story, and it connects to memories, and it stirs up other ideas in your brain, and then maybe you unmute yourself and the vibration comes out of your mouth, apparently. I mean, it's all just indescribably amazing and entirely indescribable and unknowable. You know, like I remember hearing this idea years ago that maybe from the Old Testament or something, that the true name of God couldn't be spoken, you know, and there was a specific name of God that was spoken only by the highest rabbi priests, only on the holiest day of the year, in the holiest space, next to the Ark of the Covenant. And it's a beautiful description. It's a beautiful metaphor for everything. Because how could any of us be described or known? It's all unknowable. It's all unspeakable. You know, this meeting, your nose, your hand, the suffering, the joy, the story of telling it all, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I think there is just really nothing that is ordinary in that sense, you know, because exactly, you know, everything is, if you like, maybe you're not always in that mode of realizing, but when you are, it is just so amazing to the simplest thing can be, you know, just, you can be in awe, as you just said. Yeah, so I read that kind of, you know, the extraordinary and the ordinary, but maybe there is no ordinariness in that sense. Everything is extraordinary.
Yes, exactly, Yasemin. Beautiful. And I used to not like when I would hear people say that there's nothing special. Nobody is special. Something about that I just don't like. This character doesn't like. But then I looked at it a different way. I thought, oh, wait, another way to look at that is everything is infinitely unique, infinitely special. And in that way, nothing is uniquely special because everything is totally unique. Not everything is a snowflake, like Maggie was saying.
Mm.
There are no ordinary moments.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. There was an author, Robert Anton Wilson, who I think he formed some kind of skeptic society of some sort. I think it was a skeptic to the skeptic society or something convoluted like that. But but he had a prize that if anyone could mail in a description of something ordinary, he would give them like $1 million. But there really is nothing ordinary.
I love the paradox of everything. You know, like one thing can't exist without the opposite. How would you know what happiness was if there wasn't unhappiness? How would you know what good was if there isn't not good? And that paradox kind of obliterates everything, really. When speakers talk about emptiness or nothing, for me, it's like, when I saw the paradox of everything, it seems to cancel everything out, because if you've got a paradox, one thing existing the same time as another,
yes,
that kind of makes it nothing in a way, because it can't be in a way.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I was talking to you a few weeks ago, Anne, about the sound, how the sound waves do this. So anybody who knows about electrical engineering.
Give me a great example.
What's that?
Tell us that again.
Yeah. So it's basically like, it's a principle of physics, but you can see it in sound, in where if you take a sound wave that goes like this, and you put its total opposite on top of it that goes like this, they actually do cancel each other out and produce silence, produce nothing.
Yeah.
And also what comes to mind, Anne, is, you know, the quantum physicist David Bohm. He said that the opposite of one very deep truth is an equally deep truth.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it, really. It's yeah, it's just the paradox of everything. I find that very freeing, very you know, just I don't know, it's just something that, for me, you know, here it seems to mean, it seems to have a lot in it that's kind of set me free of beliefs and concepts.
Yeah.
Mind things, yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to try to land somewhere. You know, there's no perfect way to put this or perfect way to describe it. You know, as the speaker and author Tim Freak says, you know, it's not either or logic, it's both and logic. He calls it paralogical thinking.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, a nice way of putting it. Yeah.
I mean, again, I do love these meetings because I know, you know, when the seeking was so strong here and I was going to see Tony Parsons and, you know, I've been through the lot, mooji and everyone, you know, I couldn't help but put the person, the speaker, on a pedestal and think they'd got something special and almost think they were kind of like non-human, especially when they're saying there's no one here. You know, it seemed much more than it actually is. You know, it seemed much more sort of, I don't know what the word is for it, magical, and it is magical, but it seemed, you know, yeah.
Well, it comes back to that head in the tiger's mouth already. You know, it's already happening and it's already finished. You know, Paul calls
it, that's it, Art. Yeah. I mean, that was the big sort of, when the seeking stops, and there's nothing you can do to stop the seeking, I don't believe.
Right.
And then, you know, there's some sort of, even on the brain level, there's a recognition, or even on a intellectual level, there's a recognition of like, it's already here. And it's so simple that it's overlooked, you know, it's just the space between everything. It's the emptiness and everything. It's the moment of going off in a daydream where there's nothing happening. It's the people are, you know, everyone's probably there, you know, yeah, anyway, that's it. Yeah. Yeah, nothing to get, which is so lovely. But you couldn't have said that to me as a seeker. I couldn't help seeking. You know, it's very painful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's painful and it's beautiful as well, because I kind of miss that in a way. I kind of miss that sort of in loveness with going to meetings and listening to it 24/7, even when I'm sleeping. I've got it on, you know. I had it on, you know. I devoted my life to it. It was like my cause, you know. So there's a kind of gap when that goes. There's a kind of gap for where all that went, because you don't need it.
Well, Anne, yeah, I would suggest that, you know, it's when this becomes a sort of to do and a ritual and a comfortable thing, the body mind becomes identified with it, you know, and this is total freedom, total no handholds, nowhere to land. And the beauty of that, you know, there are these old sayings like, first there's mountains, then there's no mountains, then there's mountains again. So the beautiful thing is that once
I love that saying.
Yeah, and like once you can see that this isn't, that this particular teacher or this particular way of saying things isn't the end all be all. It's not it. It's just another thing that the mind has identified with and grabbed onto as a handhold. Then there's a letting go, and it can be very painful. It can be very painful because the identity is wrapped up in it. But then it can come back in a way where it's all okay. You know, like I could see people going to Catholic Mass or synagogue or anything and being with this, you know. There's no right or wrong way to be with this. You know, I really loved Lisa Lennon's talk at the Nothing Conference, because that was kind of what she was talking about. She was talking about how non-duality is nothing. It's literally nothing that's knowable, you know. And so to say that energy healing is not a part of non-duality, or not allowed, if you're, you know, going to a non-duality meeting, you can't do an energy healing meeting the next day, or tarot cards or astrology. It's, you know, and it's okay to be a total, you know, skeptic or atheist. Like, it's all allowed. There's permission. There is no need for anyone's permission. There's no permission or non-permission. It's just what appears to be happening already.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, Art. Hi, Carol.
Hey, Carol.
Hey, you reminded me when you spoke of the name of God that was not allowed to be said at one time, and it took me back to this part of my journey 2.5 years ago, and hearing this, what you said, talked about by a Franciscan monk, was a big part of this at one time for me. And he said he was talking to a Jewish scientist who said that, he said about this, and to cut it short, he said the real name for God is Yahweh. And whenever it is spoken properly, the mouth and when it and the tongue do not meet, and it is simply the breath of life. And that just blew my mind. Absolutely blew me, that we are the breath of life. That's just what I wanted to share with you.
That's beautiful, Carol. Thank you.
And the monks, if anyone's interested, the Franciscan monk is called Father Richard Rohr, and if you just look up Yahweh, you'll find it.
Oh yes, I have a lot of friends that tell me about Richard Rohr, right?
Yeah, and he's back.
He's also sorry.
No, I was just going to say he's very, very good. He changed he gave me almost permission, which I didn't need, to think of the message of Christ in the way that I'd always thought, but really thought that I shouldn't be, though I didn't, because I'm me, I'm very rebellious and wild. And yes, he is, he goes for the inner life. He talks about the inner life, not all this external mainstream. And he talks about that that was how it used to be in Christianity. And he very much, he likes to listen to people like Eckhart Tolle. And, you know, he actually wrote to him. He's very much, he loves this message of non-duality. And that's this Franciscan monk.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Richard Rohr, that's his name?
Yeah, Father Richard Rohr, yeah.
Father Richard Rohr, and I hear he also helps with addiction as well for people from that background or want someone from an addiction background. He's good for that as well. And yes, for people who are from a Christian fundamentalist kind of ideological background, but who are resonating with this non-dual message, Richard Rohr is a great person to listen to. So is John Butler. I really personally enjoy. And there's other people out there too. That's the beauty of this. Again, like Yuji said, it shows up. Yeah, it's a snowflake, like Maggie said.
Yeah, Father Richard Rohr, for some reason, adores alcoholics. I'm in a 12-step program myself, so I get the 12-step program. And he also has some talks where he links stories of Jesus in the Bible into the message of the 12-step program, which is, I myself can see how it resonates with each other, but I needed to have a 12-step program for me first.
Yes.
Before I came to this, because my character needed to be sorted out over a lot of years because there was so much damage there.
Yeah.
To be able to come onto this journey, this new journey, apparent journey, whatever it is.
Well, it's wonderful to have you here, Carol.
Thank you. Thank you. What was the name of the other person you said? Was it John Butler?
Yes, John Butler. I like him. He's a very gentle, elderly gentleman somewhere in England. He's usually out in nature somewhere. And I love the way he talks about nature and the silence. Yeah, he's a very gentle, quiet way of speaking.
I've written his name down. I shall have a look for him later. Excellent.
And yeah, just so everyone knows, because I think we're approaching the end of the meeting and I notice people are already starting to dip out. So I host a meeting twice a week. I'm putting my email here again. The meeting I host is just like this. It's also free. It's on Wednesdays and Sundays. And for the details, just send me an email, or you could message me on Facebook, Art Pinsof. And in another 15 minutes, I'll do the final announcements again for nothing. But we're still having a meeting for the next 15 minutes. Emily, I was wondering if you were around. Looks like you might be away from the camera right now. I'm gonna ask you what was on your mind. Let's see, who else is here? Who else would like to speak that hasn't spoken? Julie, I don't know if you would want to speak or not, but I would love to hear if you did want to speak. Let's see. My nothing people, Harry and Noel, would either of you like to chime in and say hello, share? I guess it's just you and me, Carol.
I was typing there.
Yeah.
Since we're talking monks or fathers or priests or whatever, Anthony DeMello was really important for me early on. He wrote a book particularly called The Way to Love. And, you know, he practiced his parish was in India for many years, although he was a monk. And I'd say, you know, if you're going to research people, he's worthy of looking into as well. He had a message that, you know, it caused him, I think, to be excommunicated from the Catholic Church, but really pretty potent. Pretty potent.
Thank you. Thank you. I've written that down. I laughed when you said about the excommunication, because I know Father Richard Raw has done that fine line. He was always in trouble with the popes up until this one, actually, which says a lot that that this one is a lot more not fundamentalist.
So here's another thing I want to just say. It's so funny. I hereby decree that I am stopping seeking. I don't give a flying fuck anymore. And I doubt that that's really true, but I realize, you know, it's just, I'm tired of chasing my own tail. And when I hear the stories of the fallen, you know, as often people refer to themselves, it's like, why would I ever want that? I don't want that experience. You know, I'm not willing to pay the price of the loss of me completely. So I'll just tag along and do the best and try to take what's offered. And there was one person, some of you might know him, Benjamin Smythe, who I was in conversation with, and he used to be very visible years ago, but he's not been so much. But anyway, he said to me, what are you after? Just go and have a nice life. I mean, isn't that what we all want? You know, it's like, there's nothing in it for us as individualities, you know, finding this indescribable ephemeral experience that is all born of the thought stream. So anyway, I'm just saying, I'm still going to be present in these groups, but I'm kind of done.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, Lynn, I thought that was interesting, and I resonate with you. I guess I just want to say, I don't necessarily think, like, because I've thought what you've thought before, that, like, it's kind of the end of you, I guess, and it is a big sacrifice. And, like, sometimes I'm like, I like foods or music. I feel like I would be lost without preferences to a certain extent. But I just don't even think, that's, like, not, like, I don't think anyone loses their preferences just because of illumination or changing their perspective, you know? It's like, I think you're still going to enjoy similar food, similar music, similar activities. It's like, yeah, I just think it's, I don't know, a bit, adding a bit too much fear to it to say that it's going to totally warp all those things. As a person who's, like, felt that fear, you know, that's my opinion.
it shows up differently for everyone, and it's always already here anyway. It's in the seeking, it's in the end of seeking, the totality and the nothing.
You know, for me, it comes down to being very honest and saying, I want to want. That's really where I sort of settle, and I have to make peace with it. That's you know.
I mean, yeah, I think that's human nature. I don't think that's potentially ever going to change or should change. So that's, you know, that's nice and natural.
I don't think there's anything that anybody has to give up for this, because it is so totally all-inclusive. You know, it's not that, I wouldn't say it's that you know, that the wanting and the desire and the longing and the anything like that stops. And if anything, the character gets stronger, you know. It's more that the suffering disappears, you know. The sort of, yeah, it's but I don't think that kind of have to give yourself up or become a monk or not like things or have a spiritual life or anything like that. I think
Yes.
it's so all inclusive, you know, it's everything, absolutely, warts and all, you know, horrible things as well. It is. Just to mention, I find it difficult to hear all moms. I don't know if your sound's not up a lot, but sorry, I couldn't hear you very well. So I'd let you know, because I would like to hear what you're saying. It might just be me, but just for next time. I heard some of it, but it was a little bit muffled here. I don't know about anyone else.
From me?
No, from all moms.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Jerry. Get into your mic, Jerry, and give us your...
I can talk louder and then talk
louder. Yeah, Jerry, it's fine. I could hear everything you said, but
yeah,
but hey, thank you, Anne. I see that we're running low on time, and I see that PJ is unmuted. PJ, was there something you wanted to share or express? PJ? You're unmuted. Oh, maybe that's an accident. Well, Emily, I wanted to give you a chance to share. You know, you've been a part of the meeting, but outside of this meeting before, and I'd love to hear what's on your mind during this meeting.
Well, thank you, Art, and hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hey. So I just, I guess what's coming to me right now is just, I just think it's beautiful how we can all come together and acknowledge this space with each other and kind of see it reflected as each person shares. So I'm really grateful for that. And it's just really cool to participate with everyone here. I recently had an experience, and I think Art, you can relate to this, and perhaps others, where I either sprained or broke my toe.
Oh no.
And yeah, I know. And it was really interesting how, you know, and I was able to kind of use this experience as the pain as like an opportunity or I don't know what you would call it, just as a way of slowing down and also just appreciate how much mobility and freedom that we take for granted. And I was a lot less resistant to the experience this time, and embraced the slowing down and just like meditating more and just kind of just being with all of it in a way that was less frustrating. And, you know, but, you know, the frustration's okay too. So just embracing it and loving it. And yeah, I mean, it's funny how we can take, I mean, it's endless. All of the experiences that we have in every moment that we can make the choice to, and sometimes they're more extreme, like what we were talking about earlier, than others, where, you have this great pain and it can be like a way to just wake up. Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's the mind body, but what am I choosing right now? So it's, so it's an experience that I'm having, and just something that I've been inquiring about. And I thought I'd share that today. So, and thank you again, everybody, and Art, for having this space today, and for everyone that's sharing. It's really beautiful to see the reflections. So.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you for sharing, and I hope your toe heals quickly.
Thank you.
Mary Jane, I was wondering if you had any final thoughts, since you were the first one who spoke this meeting. I was wondering if this meeting, you have any, just what's showing up now.
I'm so speechless right now. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, that's perfect.
It is kind of, I've been really grasping this, sending loving kindness and just sending love to our difficult issues and people and situations. And the more I'm so settled down in it right now, I must be exhausted, because this meeting has brought me to a sense of peace where I feel like I could rest.
Well, you don't need to say any more, Mary Jane. That's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you all for this. And thank you for this feeling. It feels so good to be this way right now and calm.
Thank you for sharing, Mary Jane.
You're welcome. Thank you all. Thank you, Art.
I think Ramana might say that you are that calmness. So thank you.
Art, when Mary Jane was speaking briefly, that nobody has rest as a purpose, do they? in duality, there's these great purposes in life, saving the world and or getting rich or whatever, but nobody has rest as a purpose. What an amazing purpose in life. Rest. Just rest.
Yeah.
Just occurred to me. I thought it was quite funny. Because I feel that's gone along with non-duality for me, more and more rest. Just rest all the time. It's like a bottom, the context of everything, rest.
Yes.
Which is lovely. I find that just so amazing.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Anne. Thank you for sharing that. And Jared, I'm muting you because we're at the end of the meeting. So actually, everyone could unmute in a moment and say goodbye. But before we end, I need to just do the announcements. This is an event today that's produced by Nothing Media. So I want to thank Emerson, Harry, and Noel for allowing me to do this with this group. Of course, some of you I know from my group, and I've met some new people. And I have my email there for anyone who wants more information about the group I host outside of this. And I'll be hosting this again, I think, every third Friday of the month proceeding, for the time being. And next Friday, actually, we're going to have it again because it's Christmas and there's nothing else scheduled. So if anyone is just home alone on Christmas afternoon or morning or whatever time it is there for you, evening for those of you in overseas. But anyway, we'll be doing this meeting again next Friday, and then after that, every third Friday. And go to nothing.fm for all the information about the upcoming meetings that Nothing will be doing. Interviews, I mean. Emerson has been doing these amazing interviews with speakers. I really loved his Q&A and interview with Joan Tollefson. That's on their YouTube channel. I highly recommend it if you didn't see it. And then next month, there's a retreat with Jim Newman, who is someone that I really love. I love the way he describes this message. He's like a samurai surgeon. He's just very precise and surgical, and I think it'll be a lot of fun for anyone who's interested in more of this. You could find out on nothing.fm. So everyone, you can unmute yourself if you want and say goodbye. You know, thank you everyone for being a part of this.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Art.
So lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
you, everyone.
It was nice to be here with you all. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Art.
Thank you.
Very relaxed.
Wonderful, Freddy.
Yeah, so
And
chill.
see you again.
See you again soon, Freddy.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Maggie.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mary Jane. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Francisco. Thank you, all moms. All moms across the world need thanks. And so do you. Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Carol. Thank you for sharing, Carol. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Daron. Thank you, Dimitri. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Julie, for everything you do to help. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Lynette. Thank you, Peter. All right, I'm going to end the meeting now. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.